What's going on, guys? K923, the video game professor here, and I'm talking about the Beastmen downloadable content today for Warhammer Total War. Oh my god, I am so excited. I've played my fair share of tabletop Warhammer Fantasy, and the Beastmen have always been my favorite army to collect. I love their wild, monstrous aesthetic. Sadly, in the tabletop universe, they were never very competitive, relying too much on chance with their miserable leadership. Hopefully, CA will have balanced this for Total War, and I can bring the wrath of the herd on my enemies. Alright, enough of that. Let's get to what's confirmed and what's being speculated. The release of the DLC is July 28th, but here's what we can confirm from the trailer and the following screenshots. The Beastmen will operate like a cross between Chaos, in that they are a Horde army, and the Orcs, as the trailer shows a bar in the lower left-hand side of the screen which looks like a WOG bar. They'll be encouraged to keep fighting, perhaps able to recruit more herds depending on the level of their fightiness bar. Confirmed units through the screenshots and trailer are Khazrak the One-Eye, Malagos the Dark Omen, Gore, Ungor, Minotaur with great weapons, Gore with two-hand weapons, Gore with one hand and shield, Ungor Raiders, Centaur with javelin and spear and shield, Razor Gore, Minotaurs with great weapons, Minotaur with two weapons, Giants, Cygors, Bray Shamans, Beastigors with two-hand weapons, and a whip! Beastigors with great weapons and armor, and Razor Gore chariots. Now here's a quick description of what to expect from these units, the ones that are confirmed and the ones that are speculated in case you are unfamiliar with the Beastmen. The Gore are your standard infantry with one hand and shield or dual-wielding weapons. The Ungor are a light infantry unit, usually with spears. Ungor Raiders are missile units that have potentially Vanguard. Warhounds are your standard fast attack beasts like Chaos Warhounds. Tuskor chariots are like giant big chariots. The Minotaurs are monstrous infantry with great weapons, one hand and shield, or dual-wielding with a nasty charge and blood rage. Beastigors are like your great sword infantry of the Empire. They've got armor, they've got great weapons, and they are just built to kill. Razor Gores are angry pig quill beasts with good movement and a charge bonus. The Razor Gore chariots are angry pig quill beasts with Beastigors atop a chariot to mess things up. Centaurs are your cavalry with throwing axes or javelins and spears and a shield. Harpies are flying fast attack units that are good for taking out pesky war machines. Giants are your standard giants, but now with horns, just not the chaos kind. The Cygor is the only option for artillery that the Beastmen have. It's a giant cyclops that hurls boulders and has a few anti-magic abilities. They usually get a bonus against fighting wizards. Gorgon is a horribly scary monster that can charge around killing stuff and swallowing enemy units whole. The Jabberslythe is a flying monster that can shoot, cause terror, and will likely have one or two other special rules to represent some of the rules that he had in the tabletop, like when he would cause wounds when he was wounded. Some of the hero units we can expect: the Beast Lord, which is a generic elite general, the Great Bray Shaman, which is a generic elite wizard, the Doom Bull, which is the generic elite Minotaur, and then you have like the lesser versions of those, the Wargore, which is the Bray General, the Bray Shaman, which is the low-cost wizard, and the Gore Bull, which is a lower-cost Minotaur leader. So, the confirmed heroes we have: Malagor the Dark Omen. He's likely going to be able to purchase his wings and let him fly around, casting spells. He'll have good leadership. He'll be able to support the herd from all over the battlefield. And then we have from the trailer Khazrak the One-Eye. He, in tabletop, helped units ambush in the game. He was able to join units, which was great because he couldn't get singled out and shot in the head with a cannon. I'm not sure how that's going to really be represented in the game, but he's most likely going to be a pretty competent melee general. Okay, so we're also going to get some magic. Now, the Beastmen had access to Lore of Shadow, Lore of the Wild, and Lore of Beasts. I think they also had access to Lore of Death, so that's fantastic. More death sniping. Anyway, it's most likely that we're going to see the Lore of Beasts added, but we'll talk about that later. Just on the off chance that they add Lore of the Wild like they did with Lore of Vampires, the Lore of the Wild spells were Bestial Surge, which allowed all friendly units to move in addition to their standard movement, which would in-game likely give the Beastmen increase in speed. Vile Tide was a standard magic missile, and no real bells and whistles attached to it. Devolve forced enemy units in range to take a leadership test or suffer wounds, likely to either be a multiple hit damage attack and add some negative leadership to the enemy units that it is cast upon. Bray Screen gave a unit a pretty nice breath weapon. That's not going to really translate into the game too well. Most likely it'll be a conal spell focused on the caster. Traderkin, which is hilarious, made cavalry units take hits from their mounts. Not sure if they would make a cavalry-only spell, but it's possible. Mantle of Grok was a huge buff to strengthen attacks with a small chance of hurting the target. Likely it'll be a single or group target that will increase melee attack and weapon strength. And finally, there was Savage Dominion, which allowed the caster to summon a monster and sort of spirit link to it, meaning that if the monster got hit and took wounds, the caster got hit and took wounds. That would be a huge spell to add in Total Warhammer. I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see. Now, Lore of Beasts is likely what's going to be added with the DLC because there's a lot of armies that would be able to use it, including the Empire, Beastmen, obviously, Bretonnia, Elves, and hopefully the upcoming Ogres and Lizardmen. Now, vampires were able to use it if they took a special rule called Forbidden Lore, but that's not in the game, so I don't think the vampires are going to have it. Anyway, so their signature spell was Wildheart, or their signature lore was Wildheart, which was a lore tribute that allowed casting on cavalry to be more effective, more likely to be successful, and Beastmen, as well. So obviously that's why Beastmen would probably have it. Okay, so Wasan's Wild Form. This was the signature spell and probably the best spell in the list for the tabletop game, because of its reliability and its benefits. It was a huge buff to units that it was cast on. It would increase their strength and toughness. We'll see this translated to increase melee defense and weapon strength. Then there was Flock of Doom, which was a basic magic missile, nothing too impressive. There was Pan's Impenetrable Pelt, which was a buff to defense for all units in range. Not too impressive, but if you have a lot of units globbed together, the benefits can be huge. Next, there's the Amber Spear, which was a magic missile that hit with the strength of a cannonball. Not too impressive by itself, but for an army lacking artillery like the Beastmen, it can be hugely useful. The Curse of Anrahir was a lowered the accuracy and made all terrain dangerous for the units it was cast on. So, in dangerous terrain, if you failed a leadership test, you would take wounds from like stubbing your toe on very painful rocks. If this made it into the game, it would likely cause a negative to leadership and a negative to speed on enemy units. And we have the Savage Beast of Horus, which is a huge buff to units in range, which will transfer in game to boosting melee attack speed and weapon strength significantly. And finally, there's the Transformation of Kadan. This spell turned the wizard into a monster, like a literal monster, like a giant or like a chimera or anything huge, big, dangerous. Now this could be absolutely game-changing in a game of Total Warhammer, although somewhat situational. I don't think it's going to make it into the game, but if it did, it would be fantastic. So that's all we've got here with the Beastmen. Now, they're a horde army with low armor, low leadership, and special rules including ambush, which would let them sort of choose a table edge that they wanted to play off of, and then like every turn you would roll to see if they came into game. I'm not sure how that might exactly translate into the Total Warhammer game. Most likely you're going to see a lot of Vanguard units or something similar to that. I'm most likely you're going to see a lot of Beastmen units with Vanguard. They also had Primal Fury, which in tabletop gave them extra attacks and a chance to reroll misses when fighting humans and elves. So you can sort of expect the Beastmen to have a greater melee attack speed or a greater just melee attack just to sort of represent that. Basic strategy for tabletop included using Razor Gores for flanking the enemy, pinning them down with Beastigores, Gores, and Ungors, and just smashing Minotaurs into the enemy, and hoping for the best. If you like the dark-powered aesthetic of Chaos, running a horde in the general campaign, and being able to field lots of units and monsters, the Beastmen are going to be an army for you. I can tell you now, they sure as hell are going to be the army for me. This is K-Knight23, the video game professor. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on your thoughts of this DLC and what speculation you might have. I gotta go sound the horn and call the herds. I'll see you guys in-game the 28th of July.